Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and I just wanted to make a quick video talking about the recent reveal from not Games Workshop, the other one, Creative Assembly, there we go. They have announced when we will get the announcement for the next Total War Warhammer 2 DLC. So we already know that it is a campaign pack that is going to be the same scope as the Tomb Kings. We know it has something to do with salt, and now we literally have an X on a map that I can't tell if it's supposed to be out in the ocean or maybe it's on land. It seems like it's an ocean marker. But between the fact that we've already heard some stuff about salt, and we already have heard some, and we have this image now that literally is an X on a map. X marks the spot. I feel pretty confident that we are looking at something to do with pirates. So, for those unaware, there are two kinds of pirates that are essentially available for Total War Warhammer 2, based on like the way the map looks and all that jazz. Which is essentially that there is the Vampire Coast, which over in Lustria, they're already a faction, or an AI faction, where it's a pirate. They're kind of the most famous pirate faction next to Sartosa. Those are the only two like super famous ones. Of course, there are other pirates in the world, in a strict sense of the definition of the word, like raiders and stuff, where you have your, your dark elves and your Norskins and such. But from this, I feel pretty confident saying we're looking at either Sartosa with a human-based Southern Realms kind of DLC, or we're looking at the Vampire Coast. Now, what makes this really tricky is that many people have pointed out already, it seems like it would be very difficult to make a full DLC based on just one of these groups. Sartosa, I could see having a part of the Southern Realms DLC, in that you could have like Sartosa, Estalia, Tilia, and the Border Princes, for instance, is each their own race with a legendary lord. But that doesn't seem to be focused enough on like the whole ocean and piratey aesthetic, in my opinion. But once again, people have pointed out that Vampire Coast seems strange because the only legendary lord we have associated with the Vampire Coast is Luther Harkin. The only other one that's really associated with the Vampire Coast is his first mate, whose name is slipping my mind at the moment, but he made an appearance in the end times. But he would be more like, he's kind of more like Harkin's Krell, as opposed to a like fully functioning side lord. So if it is the Vampire Coast, it is possible we're looking at a pure Vampire Coast DLC, in that the Vampire Coast, contrary to what some people may know, is actually its own race in Warhammer Tabletop. They are not like the Vampire Counts. They have some similarities, but they're pretty different in that the Vampire Coast is almost entirely a very aggressive shooting army, whereas obviously the Vampire Counts have no shooting at all. So there's some interesting differences between the two. Also, the Vampire Coast is a much less magically inclined faction. In their original White Dwarf release that gave the rules for if you wanted to play the army, you could not even take a wizard. Like, Luther Harkin did not have the ability to use magic, and you couldn't take any like heroes that could take magic. If I remember right, the only hero options were a type of white, which was like your commander hero, and then a siren, which was basically a slightly different banshee. Or it was a banshee, but it had a different kind of scream attack. It was a little different. But it did have an interesting, unique roster. So that is a distinct possibility we could be looking at here. Of course, another option is Sartosa, which the only way Sartosa would work is you would have to essentially do a Dogs of War DLC. That's the only other way it could work. Which Dogs of War, for those kind of unfamiliar with them, are essentially a gathering of many, many different elite troops. Well, not necessarily elite, but very interestingly iconic troops and characters from all over the place that were essentially mercenaries. It was basically like, they're kind of like rogue armies, the faction. But the reason I'm kind of not feeling the Dogs of War is because the Dogs of War are already in the game as the rogue armies. Like, some people aren't aware of this, but most of the Dogs of War have already been implemented into the game, and you can run into them as rogue armies that have kind of their whole shtick to it. That being said, that of course that doesn't by any means rule out the possibility that they might be giving us a rogue army faction with the Dogs of War. That would be really bizarre, but I guess it would be interesting. Personally, at this point, I am leaning much more heavily towards... Here's what I think is going to happen. Personally, I'm thinking that we're looking at maybe a new type of campaign pack. Because I don't think, based on what I know... The Vampire Coast seems the most likely to me. Like, almost a guaranteed at this point. However, I don't see how they could do 4 Legendary Lords for it unless they really pulled some crazy crap out of their butt. But what they could do that would actually be really interesting is if maybe it was like a 2v2 DLC. So instead of a Lord pack that just gave us, for instance, a like Luther Harkin as a vampire count versus some ruler of Sartosa as an Empire pirate lord. What if instead we got like 2 vampire lords with kind of like a weird new hybrid faction? Like maybe they're like vampire counts, but some of their units are gone and replaced with like the shooting zombies. And then for the Pirates of Sartosa, you would have the Empire roster, but maybe like the knights and stuff are all replaced with more like brigands and pirate units. That's the only way I could really see it working, unless they're going to be doing something pretty crazy. That being said, I am definitely going to be keeping a big open mind going into this. We've been waiting a really long time for the next DLC, and we don't have to wait that long. So it's about a week away, the announcement, and once it announces, CA tends to take usually in the ballpark of 2 weeks between announcements and releases. So hopefully we'll be looking at a mid-October release. If it's Vampire Coast, it might end up being a Halloween release if they want to be cheeky, but I'm not, that's totally up in the air. I will say that I'm super excited. If it is a pirate-themed DLC, I really, really, really hope that means they're going to be doing something with the ocean and making the ocean, like, interesting. Because one of the weakest parts of the game right now is the ocean, because there's a lot of it, especially if you're playing Mortal Empires or the Vortex campaign. You have to cross a crap load of ocean if you want to do anything interesting. But right now the ocean just sucks. Like, the treasures are decent, but they're not interesting by any means. Like, you don't have to work for it. You just move across it, grab your loot, and move on. And you're forced to auto-resolve. Now, I don't think we're looking at, like, actual naval warfare. There's no way. No way. It would be way too complicated, and CA's been kind of backing away from naval warfare anyway in all of their most recent releases. So I am 100% certain we are not looking at naval warfare. What we might be looking at, though, is the ability to fight at sea. Like, if we get the ability to fight on a Black Ark, like I've been wanting since the Dark Elves were announced, I will be so excited. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is that we know for a fact that they've been packaging a free LC update to every one of the Game 1 races along with these DLCs. Well, at least the base 4 of Dwarves, Vampire Counts, Empire, and Greenskins. Hopefully that will continue to be the case with this one. So for anyone who doesn't remember, we got a free dwarf, you should remember, we got a pretty substantial free dwarf update with the Queen and the Crone that gave us Karak Hadron as a faction with Ungrim as the legendary lord, who was moved to be its faction leader. And we also got the runic crafting system, and we also got the Giant Slayer unit. All of those were fantastic updates that really made the dwarf campaign a buttload more interesting and also made them more competitive in multiplayer. They're still not amazing because not having Cav is such a difficult thing to surmount, but they're good. So I'm really hoping that either the Greenskins, Vampire Counts, or the Empire will be seeing an update alongside this one. If it ends up being the Vampire Coast, I imagine we'll be looking at a Vampire Count update. If it's like pirates of human pirates, then I would expect an Empire update. And if it's some mix of the two, then it's a complete toss-up. I don't think it's going to be the Greenskins, because they would make the least sense. That being said, doing Dwarves with Queen and the Crone also didn't make sense, so never mind, it could be anybody. Whoever's next on their list. So, yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video about it. I am super excited for whatever this is. Obviously, it has been a long dry season between Queen and the Crone back in May and now, but hey, we have an announcement date, which will give us a release date, and then life is gonna be good. So, I hope everyone is as excited as I am. I think this time, because my camera is up and working and stuff, and people seem to really enjoy it, I will probably do a live reaction, live recording of my reaction. Maybe we'll even stream it. But in any event, I hope you all have a great day. I will be putting out videos when I learn anything new about this DLC, and I would love to hear your thoughts about what you think it is below or what you'd like to see. You know, if we are going to be able to fight at sea, how would you like to see it implemented? Are you more excited for the idea of a zombie shooting army or human pirates or a mix? You know, do you want it to be Southern Realms or do you want it to be Vampire Coast? Which, for anyone that hasn't looked at the Vampire Coast roster, maybe I should do a video on that tomorrow. They actually have a pretty interesting roster, and like I said, it's nothing like the Vampire Counts. A lot of people might get confused out there and be like, oh, Vampire Coast would just be more Vampire Counts. No. No. They are very different from each other. Wildly different. Like, they're both undead. But I would say Vampire Coast is as similar to Vampire Counts as Tomb Kings are to Vampire Counts. So let that sit. In any event, like I said, we'll be updating as more information comes out. It's funny, on the subreddit, I saw somebody looked at this and was like, oh, hey, it's a tic-tac-toe board, and they drew a circle up here, and they challenged Grace to a tic-tac-toe match, and she drew another X. But so, to me, it hilariously does kind of look like a tic-tac-toe board if this line just carried a little further over, which, who knows, maybe it actually is a tic-tac-toe board, and they're going to completely blindside us with the Lizardman Skaven DLC, despite everything they've said, with Tic-Tac-Toe Legendary Lord, who is the Pterodon special character. That's a joke. That's not actually a thing. It's just a joke. There's no way that's it. Alright, I'm going to go now. Thank you all for watching. I will see you as more information comes out. Bye, guys.